I'm now going to introduce Tim Cambell, who's going to be doing a presentation. Tim, as everyone will know, is famous for being the first winner of The Apprentice, and no mean feat, I guess, to come through that fairly gruesome-looking process. And I'm sure there's a lot of it isn't seen by the actual public when they're watching the actual programme. But again, from there, I think what Tim has been particularly effective in doing is actually sharing his experiences and addressing some of the opportunities for entrepreneurs to actually learn and to grow and develop from that. Tim will be also speaking immediately after lunch, but with no further ado, Tim Cambell, thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Oh, has it been that bad today? Good afternoon, everybody. That's much better. Can I ask for people at the back to come forward ever so slightly? I know we've got fantastic acoustics in this beautiful building, but I love to see the whites of your eyes as I tell you the stories so you can't fall asleep. Fantastic, much appreciated. Thank you very much for my introduction, and thank you very much for inviting me to your event today. My name's Tim Cambell, and yes, I did win The Apprentice an awful long time ago, but I'm not here to talk about selling your soul to the TV devil or doing nonsense on television. As everyone here probably appreciates, there's much better ways to probably make money and make achievements of your life. Hence why investing in business is a fantastic initiative I'm glad to be part of. What I aim to do today is tell you a bit about my experiences post-Apprentice, a little bit before, but also the 4 things which I think are incredibly important about dealing with the rapid changes that are happening in our environment. And they are as follows, and there will be a test at the end, so I hope you're all listening, you've got your pens at the ready. Don't worry, I won't pick on you first, I'll come to you afterwards, but don't worry, don't worry. Get your pens out, get your pens out. So for me, they are about customer service, they're about brand, they're about your P's and your Q's, and I'll explain that later, and lemons. Yes, I did say lemons, don't worry, it all will be revealed as we go forward. I grew up in London, a little way away from where we are now, but I was brought up and the only reason I tell you the context of where I started, because it's interesting in terms of some of the stuff that I do now. And I think some of the drivers and passion forces that get us to do some of the entrepreneurial activity we do are very important in terms of driving through some of the difficult periods that do inevitably happen with our business endeavours. Also often we hear about the successes of companies, but we also don't talk about the changes and the difficulties that can happen with business, particularly in the ever-changing environments that we work in. As I started to say, I grew up in East London. Anyone from East London here? No, I'm all by myself. Okay, that's why I'm on the stage, I suppose. I was brought up by a very passionate, determined single parent from Jamaica, my mother. And for those who understand the power of a Jamaican disciplinarian, there were periods of time, there were periods of time when I couldn't sit down for about 3 or 4 weeks because of the discipline that she inflicted. Please don't phone anybody to try to get her arrested. It's not the aim of this conversation. And I ran the marathon for the NSPCC, so they won't help you anyway. But the whole point around my mum's focusing of my attention was that from a very early age, she instilled into me a couple of behaviours which I think were incredibly important in getting to me where I am now. One of those was a very strong work ethic. My mum used to go out in the morning. She used to take us to our auntie. Well, she wasn't really my auntie. She was white, so it obviously wasn't my auntie. But she used to take me across the way in the block of flats we used to and drop us off, go to do her first job, come and pick us up, take us to school, pick us up after school, go and do her second job, and then do evening sewing to make sure that she could get everything that we needed. Now, I was always told by my mother the way that we were going to succeed in life was around education, education, education. Tony Blair is currently being sued for stealing her mantra. But I remember you had an earlier conversation today from one of the earlier speakers talking about the importance of graduates and having different opportunities. And unfortunately, the only opportunity I was told was the only way you were going to be successful was to go to university. But I didn't have the same kind of ambitions as my mum from early age. I wanted stuff. I wasn't poor, I've seen real poverty. I've been fortunate enough to go around the world and see some abject poverty condition. But I had this great desire for things that I couldn't quite afford, or more specifically, my mother couldn't afford. So I remember begging my mum for particular things, and the one item that always sticks in my head was a pair of Nike Air Pegasus basketball trainers. I love these things. Everybody had them at school, and you had to have them, particularly when you were going to secondary school, because you had to be in the cool crowd. So I remember begging my mum for these trainers. Mum, please can I have them? Please can I have them? And she said, Tim, we can't afford them. I was like, please, I need these trainers. And she said, Tim, can't afford them. I was so disappointed. So she went out and she got me a pair of trainers. She came back, and it was these Nick trainers with the E missing off the end. And everybody did what you just did when I went back to school and laughed, so thank you for bringing that all flooding back to me. But I was very disappointed, and I was very vexed with the situation because I went to school and people laughed at me. and I was seen as a bit of an outsider. But instead of going and finding other resources, and there was numerous ways I could have done to go and get the trainers I wanted, I actually went and got my first job. I actually went and I begged one of the guys who owned a second-hand shop to give me the opportunity to come and work for him. He eventually did, and he gave me the very high title of chief oven cleaner. And he was a bit of a sadomasochist, so he gave me pink Mariglow gloves, and I could clean your cooker and make it shine. Elbow grease had nothing on me, believe me. But it wasn't a long-term career goal, shall we say. And I saved up the money I accumulated over the weekend, £20 for the whole weekend. Child labour laws weren't in act in those days. And I saved up and I bought my first pair of trainers. And they were beautiful things. They were gleaming white. They were basketball trainers. I couldn't play basketball, but it didn't matter. I had the trainers. And it was one of those when it rained, I used to put plastic bags over the top of them, and you weren't allowed to step on them because that was not going to happen. But what they were a manifestation of what I could actually get if I focused all my energy and effort to something I wanted. And that was an incredibly important lesson for me to learn very early on, because it kind of broke the cycle of following the normal path of what everybody else was doing. And I realised I could find other ways by using my head and my hands to create things that I needed. And yes, I was still working for somebody, but I actually took myself out to go and do that. Anyway, I went back and got back into the cycle of education. I wasn't the angel student that lots of people will say in some of the things that they write about me. I disappeared for about 6 months of the year, going and playing pool in a local pool hall. I was trying to be the black Steve McQueen and hustle people in Steve. It wasn't really going to work. But my mum found out what I was doing, and she inflicted that Jamaican discipline, dragged me back into school. And I then learnt my next very important lesson, which was I was introduced to one of the most fantastic individuals in my life, a young man called Mr. Foley, who was one of the mentors who took me under his wing and advised me what I wanted to do. I think it's incredibly important in business to dispel this myth that we have to do it all by ourselves. All too often, when we are starting an endeavour, all of our peers, all of our friends, all of our family, their experience isn't very similar. They're working 9 to 5 and you're out trying to create this fantastic thing on your kitchen tables or in your shed somewhere, and no one quite gets what you're trying to do. And they'll all say lovely things like, yeah, that's fantastic, I really support you. And they'll go off and they'll go into their own normal life and forget you on the corner. And that experience of getting a mentor who actually showed me about how I could do things in an easy way is incredibly important around business, I think. I eventually left with all the qualifications I required. I went to university. My mum faxed my certificate all around Jamaica, and I was fantastic, the first Cambell in the household to go. So it was a very good achievement for my mum, and she was very proud of that. But I had this piece of paper, and I felt kind of hollow, because I'd got this achievement, but it wasn't really for me. It was for somebody else. It was something else that I was supposed to get because that was the way it was going to be. And because of that hollow feeling, I wanted to do something else. I didn't know quite what it was yet. So I went to work for London Underground, and that was fine and fantastic, and I did that work. And I realised very quickly that I wanted to do something else which was a bit more exciting, but I didn't have the opportunity yet. And that's where the apprentice came in, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. But one of the things I learned going through my graduate traineeship at London Underground was the power of brands, the power of branding. Now, I want to play a little game with you because I think it's good to be interactive, particularly as you're all standing on your feet and I'm the only thing between you and a sandwich later. So let's play a game so you don't all rush towards me on the stage. So I want you all to close your eyes. Just close your eyes for a second. Don't worry, I can't get your handbags, I'm not that fast. Close your eyes. Just close your eyes. Okay, if I was to say to you, every little helps, what would you think? Tesco. Someone said Tesco, fantastic. This side of the room's too posh, they only go to Waitrose. It's okay. This side said this Tesco's. Every little helps is Tesco's, yes. Keep your eyes closed for a second. If I was to say to you Simples, what would you think? Meerkat, Compare the Market, fantastic. Keep them closed. If I was to say to you Just Do It, what would you think? Nike, you know I love Nike. I'm not being sponsored by them now, I make that clear. Open your eyes for a second. I don't want you to fall asleep like horses and fall over, so just open your eyes for a second. But all of those companies, they've paid an incredible amount of money so that you can remember a little thing and it evokes some form of emotion or memory that you understand, that you can repeat. Even just with the littlest piece of information, you're able to repeat what their brands are. With regards to your businesses, I think that's an investment that we also have to make. But it's not just about your businesses. Actually, at this stage when you're starting up, or at the early stages, I must apologise, I don't know where everybody is with regards to their business, so I'm starting at the lowest common denominator of starting up or early stage. At that very early stage, actually, you are your brand. You are your business. And what you do around investing in yourself and the way that you are approached and you come to other people is incredibly important. Because what the importance of brands is, it's not about the fancy logo or the big tick or the fact that you can pat your bum and say you get a little discount or something. That's another brand. You know what I'm talking about, though, you see? The point about a brand is about what do people say about you or your company when you're not in the room. When you're not there, what are people saying about you or your company when you're not in the room? It's an incredibly important thing to realise, particularly when you come to events like today. Today is not about walking around the session and picking up as many freebies in the plastic bags that they give you. It's about representing your brand, so when you leave the room, people should remember you. And in my session later, we'll be talking about how you can make that better, how you can make that more efficient. And hopefully I'll see some of you in that particular room. So brands are incredibly important in the first instance. The second thing on my list was around customer service. But before I get into that, I want to dispel another myth that's in there. And I'm going to play another game with you, get you a bit more interactive.